I was 18 at the time, and it was the beginning of summer, so I was off from school and I didn't have any job. The majority of my time was spent inside the house playing video games, watching YouTube or TV, or just relaxing. When this happened, my parents were out of town for a few days, leaving me with the house. This was a common thing and was never a big deal. Sometimes I'd invite friends over or whatever. But this night, I was just enjoying the time to myself. I was watching a rerun of one of my favorite shows on Netflix while also scrolling through my phone. It was late, I don't know the exact time, but I think maybe 11 or 12, when there was a knock at the front door. I paused the TV and went to see who it was. It almost didn't even register in my mind that it was so late, but thankfully it did before I carelessly would have opened the door. I looked in the peephole and saw two men both wearing similar clothes and just waiting for me to answer. I stood there and thought for a second whether or not to let them know I was home. By asking what they wanted, I ended up staying quiet and just watching to wait for them to leave. But a few seconds later they called out, "Hello, we're here," looking to speak with Mr. and Mrs. Ian. That was my parents they were referring to. Though I changed the name for privacy, confused, I still remained quiet, knowing it was far too late for any sort of visit, even if it was important. After a minute, the men looked at each other and said something quietly, then walked off the porch. The outdoor lights were off, so I couldn't see where they went, but I never saw any headlights or car S show up, which had me wondering if they'd walked here, which would only make things weirder. I went back to the TV but left it on pause for a while so I could hear if they came back. It only took a few minutes until I heard a pair of footsteps outside the house. They went up to the porch, but instead of knocking like they did before, they started making their way around to the side of the house. I got up and ran to the back window. As they got to the backyard, I saw them open the fence and enter, and I hid away from the window so I wouldn't be seen, but I could hear them go up to the back door. They started talking, then began messing with the door. I took this as my chance to get my phone and hide inside the garage. I called the police explaining the possible break-in that was taking place, and after less than a minute, a loud pop sound vibrated through the house and the back door slid open. Their footsteps went through the house and straight to the stairs. Going up to the bedrooms, a door opened. They entered, then closed it behind them, but after that there were no more sounds. I waited for a horrifying and slow 10 minutes in silence before the police pulled up to the house. When they did, there was a few quick footsteps upstairs. Then the two men started arguing. A few officers came in through the back door and ran upstairs while another came to the garage and helped me outside. The men didn't resist the rest, but they also didn't speak a word on why they were there, despite weeks going by and it being somewhat obvious that they weren't simply robbing the house. The only thing they could charge them with was breaking and entering. It scares me, though, that they seem to be looking for my parents, and it almost felt like they were going to wait upstairs for them until they came back from their trip. I think back to whether or not I should have shown myself and if that would have stopped the break-in. But something about their behavior tells me that they still would have broken in and would have done to me whatever was necessary. I live on the outskirts of a mid-sized town in Wyoming. The whole reason I live here is because owning a huge plot of land isn't as impossible of a task as it can be in most other states. My house is small, but it was cozy enough for living alone. This happened 4 years ago in 2019. It was spring, and we were going through A month of pouring rain almost every single day. It was a Sunday, and I was home from work, spending the day watching TV and resting. Sometime around 6 or 7, I got an unexpected knock at my door. I barely heard it through the rain. And when I entered the door, I was even more surprised to see it was some random guy, not a mailman or anything of the sorts. Someone coming all the way out onto my property without notice was very unusual. Being that it was far out of the way, "How can I help you?" I said. The guy, looking some in his late 20s, said he'd been camping out in the woods nearby and had gotten into some trouble and needed a place to stay for the night with the location of my house. If he wasn't lying, then showing up at my doorstep would make sense, because I was the closest place within the woods by at least 5 or 6 miles. It was also pouring out, which made me feel even worse for him, but it still didn't take away from the possible danger of letting a stranger into my home. I offered him a phone call to get a ride into town, but the guy denied my offer after bluntly saying he couldn't stay here. The guy walked off. I watched him go down the dirt road a little ways, then he veered off and walked into the woods. As odd as that was, I didn't have it on my mind for more than a few minutes before I was back to watching TV. I didn't check the time very often, but it had to be at least 2 hours later, and well into the night when I saw an orange glare coming from the window by my backyard. I got up and moved the curtain through the rain and fog. I saw a campfire right in the middle of the woods. Outside my house it was small, flickering under a large tree as the rain poured down on it. Standing next to it, there was the outline of a figure holding something I couldn't tell, though if he was facing my house or into the woods. After a moment, I closed the curtains and picked up my phone, calling the police to let them know about this person outside my house. I knew it would take probably an hour for them to get here, and whoever was out there wasn't doing me any harm, but at the very least, I wanted them away from my house before I went to bed. Once I got off the phone with the officer, I checked the window again. The fire was still burning lightly, but the figure wasn't there. Then I heard footsteps coming toward the house. I ran to the other window and caught sight of him walking past with a hunting rifle in his hand before he turned the corner and went to the front door. He banged on it a few times, then it went quiet. I grabbed my self-defense handgun from the hallway closet and HD around the wall, still trying to process the situation I was in. He hit the door again this time. I could tell it was with the stock of his rifle nearly breaking a panel out of the door. In this moment I could only think that I had to try to deter him immediately before it becomes life or death for one of us. I shot around toward the edge of the door frame, deafening myself for a second as the shot rang through the house. When my hearing came back, all I heard was the rain pouring down, no footsteps, banging or yelling. I gathered up courage after 5 minutes of no sounds and looked out the peephole, seeing an empty porch, and outside in the yard were clear footprints going away from the house. He must have run right after the shot. During the couple seconds I couldn't hear, police did a thorough search and found some strange details out. By where the campfire was, they found the duffel bag, with evidence of it having been buried nearby and likely dug up just hours before the attack. What they told me is that it was most likely a burglary kit or possibly even a murder kit that was planted in advance with the intent to be dug up and used later on. This means whoever attacked me had planned it and had been right outside my house at least once before that night. Why he attacked me specifically is not known, and who and where he is currently is still no closer to being figured out than it was 4 years ago. I still live in the same house and worry every day that he might come. I've always lived alone. It's just how life worked out after college. 2 jobs, tight schedule, no time for relationships or even roommates. Most nights I'd get home exhausted, just wanting a shower and sleep before doing it all over again. That routine made me overlook the little things until the little things got louder. It started with the sound of shifting wood, like creaks that came from beneath the floorboards, not the usual settling. I brushed it off the first few times, but then one night after my usual late shift, I came home and stepped into the hallway only to hear a soft thump under my feet, like something reacting to my footsteps. I froze. Then it stopped. I convinced myself I was being paranoid and went about my night. The next day, I came home earlier than usual. I decided to check the crawlspace access in my hallway closet, something I hadn't done in over a year. It was a tight squeeze and the air inside was stale, thick with dust and insulation. I shone my flashlight around and saw nothing at first, until I caught sight of a crumpled fast food wrapper and an empty water bottle tucked in the corner. That was enough to make me pull out and slam the panel shut. I called the police. When they arrived, they searched the crawlspace thoroughly. And that's when things got worse. They found bedding, a pile of clothes, a blanket, a flashlight, even a small, rusted pocket knife. Someone had been living under my house for weeks, maybe months. They said there were signs he might have been entering the main house when I wasn't there. But here's the most horrifying part. Tucked in the corner, they found dozens of crumpled pages torn from a journal, scribbled full of notes about my daily routine, my movements, when I leave, when I shower, when I sleep. They never caught the man. Every night since, I lie awake in the dark, straining to hear even the faintest creak. I sealed the crawl space shut, but sometimes I swear I still hear something scratching from beneath the floor.